And first and foremost, it does seem like things have ramped up lately. We're talking in mid September of 2025, and these last few weeks, the world has gone insane. So, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I've been on X, I've been off X actually for about 6 months because I was just kind of, I was writing this article about how social media sort of steals your time, and I kind of decided to put that into practice and not spend any time online. So I've been offline for a long time, and then about 2 weeks ago, I returned to Twitter, or X as it's now known, and I was horrified. I was literally horrified by what I was seeing in my feed. It was just videos of people committing crimes, usually migrants committing crimes, and just loads of talk of civil war between the right and the left. There are probably more people on the right than on the left now on X, and just a lot of people talking about how the left are evil and they want to kill everybody. And Elon's obviously amplifying this stuff as well. And then obviously over the past few days, there's been a double whammy of like some really high profile murders which were caught on tape. So the first was the murder of the Ukrainian migrant Irina Zaritska or something. I've forgotten her surname, but it was Irina was her first name, and she was stabbed on in the neck on a train, which was horrific, absolutely horrific. And then there was a few days later, there was the assassination of Charlie Kirk, a conservative sort of political influencer who used to have sort of public debates with people who disagreed with him, just shot out of nowhere. And this has obviously caused a firestorm on the internet, and a lot of people are now talking about crime. They're talking about political polarization, and where do we go from here? So it's been pretty emotional just seeing all of this stuff play out on my feed.
Yeah, the reaction has been really concerning. For a long time, I thought a lot of the reactions were just empty rhetoric, or they're just throwing these words out. Oh, you're a bigot, you're a racist, you're a phobe, you're ist. And I thought, okay, that's just part of the game of politics. I guess it's a wicked game. But now you're really seeing some evil effects, real world effects from this rhetoric, and it's being turned up to a level where things are, people, I am seeing a lot of people saying civil war in comments, war, but I don't even see how a civil war would play out, since like
Yeah, I mean,
the division.
yeah, I mean, I wrote about this whole thing back in 2022 because even back then people were talking about civil war. They were saying there's going to be a war between left and right. But one thing I've noticed is that the people who talk about civil war are usually very online. They spend a lot of time on Twitter. I've seen my friends, people that I've been following on the internet for 10 years. I've watched them gradually lose their minds because they spend so long on Twitter. It does that to you. Because look, there is going to be no civil war. Let's face it, there will be no civil war in the US in the immediate future. People have been saying it, including Elon. He's been saying it. But when you actually have a look at the statistics, yes, there is a lot of extreme polarization on social media. Extreme. You basically have two separate internets. You have the left-wing internet and you have the right-wing internet. But that's consigned and confined to the internet. It doesn't really, it doesn't play out in the real world much. I'll give some qualifiers to that in a moment. But basically, when you go online and you're following somebody like Elon, you look at his feed and it's just pure war. It's just like the left are going to kill us. We've got to kill them first. Literally, like I think this morning he posted something like, "We have to fight back now, or they're going to kill us all." He's like basically just lost his mind, and he just posting this stuff to his 200 million followers, and everybody's getting really, really riled up. But I actually get riled up when I go on X now. I feel like there's going to be a civil war because I feel like my primal animal brain just sees all these signals of like all this hatred, all this division, and my primal animal brain, not my logical brain, but my emotional brain, that just starts getting triggered, and I start thinking, I start getting this kind of fight or flight sort of system going. But then when I actually step out of my house and I just walk down the street, everything's very calm. I can have a conversation with my hairdresser, my barber, and he's not going to complain about my politics. He's not going to He's not going to like choose not to cut my hair because of my politics. You know, I could go to a taxi driver. We could talk politics in a friendly fashion. I can have a conversation with a stranger, and you know, we're not going to judge each other too much. It's the opposite of what you see on social media. And so even though things are extreme online, it's an illusion. Like people say social media is not real life, and it's true, it's not. The problem here, and I did say I would qualify this, the problem here is when people confuse what's going on online with what's going on in the real world. And I think that this is probably what happened with the killer of Charlie Kirk. It's very early to say, and I don't really want to speculate too much, but based on what we know that he inscribed catch fascists on one of his bullets. And this is a phrase, it's from I think an anime, I think, a very online anime. And it's basically the word fascist obviously is a reference to the kind of, I think, the kind of rhetoric that we're seeing, where people on the right are just called fascists by the left, by many people on the left, not all people on the left, but by many people on the left. And so there's a sign that maybe this guy was online and he was completely brainwashed by the sort of cherry-picked reality that social media presents, you know, where it just shows that it shows all of the worst. If you're on if you're on the left-wing internet, you'll just see the worst of the right. You'll see the worst things the right people on the right have said, the worst things they've done. You'll never see any of the good stuff. And if you're on the right-wing internet, you'll just see the worst of everything about the left. You'll just see the worst things that the left-wing people have said, the worst things they've done. You know, so it's very easy if you're just on one side of the internet to just quickly believe that everybody on the other side is evil. And it's permissible to do whatever you can to prevent them from coming to power. As I said, this is not something that affects the majority of people, because the majority of people are not engaging in these kinds of political fights online. It's actually a very small percentage of people. And I'll actually come back to that in a moment because there's something interesting about that. But the small number of people, in fact, I'll tell you about this interesting thing right now. There's been a lot of research which has found that the kinds of people that are most engaged in social media politics are not actually mentally stable people. They're people who have high rates of cluster B disorders. So I'm talking histrionic personality disorder, which is when you are hysterical and you draw attention to yourself, basically a drama queen. And narcissism as well, narcissistic personality disorder, and also psychopathy. So there was a recent study, which I reposted on my Twitter, which basically found evidence in 7 countries, including the United States, that people who are high in psychopathy are the most likely to be actively engaged in online politics. And the reason for this is that this kind of online combat, this keyboard warrioring, it fulfills a lot of needs that mentally unstable people have. Mentally unstable people need a sense of superiority. They need to feel that they are, like narcissists, for instance, they need to feel that they are superior. And one way that they feel superior is by taking the moral high ground and saying, look, I am more moral than you are, and virtue signaling and all that kind of stuff. Another need that they might have is a sense of sort of validation. So feeling that they matter. And they can also get this by becoming part of a tribe, and, all the likes and all the sort of retweets and shares that they get that boosts their ego and makes them feel good. And then there's just people that are just normally angry, right? And they're just angry at the world, and they're just angry and bitter at life generally. And they use social media politics as a way to direct their frustrations about life generally. So they can, they can scapegoat certain people and blame all of their problems on that group of people. So a lot of these psychological mechanisms mean that social media politics mentally unstable people. So what this means is it makes the online debate extremely toxic. And again, a study of Reddit found that sort of like 1% of online communities were responsible for like 70% of the conflicts. So there's certain types of people who love to start conflicts online. The thing is important to remember that these people appear far more prominent. They appear far more common than they actually are, because they have a tendency to post at a much faster rate than people who are more mentally stable, right? So if you're stable, If you're not emotional, you're not going to be motivated to post very often. But if you're highly emotional, if you're extremely outraged, if you're terrified, then you're going to be posting a lot more because you have a lot more motivation to post more. And so people are going to see posts by these highly emotional people a lot more often than they're going to see posts by mentally stable people. And this can fool people into thinking that these kinds of sentiments are a lot more common than they actually are. And so for that reason, I don't believe there's going to be a civil war. I believe that all of this talk of civil war is only amongst a tiny, tiny, tiny sliver of mostly mentally deranged people. And in the real world, people are just carrying on with their lives. They're mowing their lawns, they're watering their flowers, they're going out to restaurants, they're taking care of their kids, picking them up from school, just living life normally, right? And this is why I think that it's very dangerous to mistake social media with reality. It is not reality. When you do mistake social media with reality, you end up like the guy who assassinated Charlie Kirk.